And for the second game of this kind of part one of day one here, we have two absolute monsters in the competitive scene. I'm sure you've all heard of Winding God winning back-to-back duels of Runeterra. So we have him going up against Cephalopod, who also has some wins himself under his belt. We'll see who's able to get the better of the other here in this matchup. As always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. I was there with Boulevard all day to bring you guys the sweet Ascent of Targon action. So strap yourselves in. Don't forget to subscribe. Turn on that bell for all the rest of Ascent of Targon games that are going to be put up on this channel. And let's go ahead and get into Game 1, Winding God versus Cephalopod. Obviously, with things like the buff to Crackshot Corsair, among other things, obviously Jack the Winner being introduced as just an incredible card, incredibly well designed as well. I think Pirate Aggro is just one of the top decks now. But we are getting started here with Game 1, Winding God versus Cephalopod. And it looks like we will have this Noxus Nab deck versus the Nightfall Aggro to get started here.
All right, I'm gonna double back then and say it was probably the Lux Acel that was banned. That is a deck with a lot of healing, and you are playing a triple aggro lineup. I think that one of the reasons the players have started to fall off of the Lux Soul deck though is just because it can be a little inconsistent. You know, Radiant Guardian is a card that the longer the format goes on and the more used you get to playing around it, the better you sort of are at dealing with it. And it doesn't look like we're gonna have a turn 4 kill out of Cephalopod this time around. Does have a little bit of a slower opener, but you know we'll kind of see how turns 2 and 3 play out.
All right, and I do apologize if I am cutting off. I did just fix it there a tad. Not sure what's happening, but we do see the Duskbringer pop down there. We'll see if we're able to push through some damage here on the first turn on the side of Cephalopod. And thinking about the Lunari Shadestalker next, very curious to see if we get something as as good as a turn win here in Game 1, just like we saw in the end of the last match.
All right, Dreadway Deckhand coming down. Don't hate this. As bad as it sort of feels to, I guess, like offer up your keg as tribute, it is protecting your life total still. So, I mean, it's sort of doing the same job as a house spider in this scenario where you are just kind of protecting your life total while also developing a little bit. A little unfortunate not to be able to get the Make It Rain or something like that down besides. And as we had mentioned, Death's Hand and Noxian Fervor are the only, or Death's Hand and Ravenous Flock rather are the only Noxus cards in this deck. So would have loved to keep that keg around to get a 3 damage Death's Hand, which will deal with a lot of the units in Cephalopod's deck, Crescent Guardian and this Shadestalker, you know, sort of critically hitting. Actually, oh no, he does play Crescent Guardian. I always get confused when I'm looking at deck lists and I'm looking for Crescent Guardian because I think it's a Shadow Isle card. And it just, you know, I don't see it in the Shadow Isle. I'm like, oh, he's not playing it. That's really weird, but it is a Targon card. It even is drawn like a Shadow Isle card, I feel.
No, I agree. I feel like it should be in the stake plenty of times, but we do see the attack token go back over to Cephalopod and pretty wide field on the side of Winding God as well. So I think it's going to be pretty difficult for Cephalopod to really push through any significant damage with this Nightfall aggro deck. It's not going to be easy, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why Winding God probably didn't care too much about banning out this Nightfall deck. Because he understands that something like this Noxus Nab package, you are going to have plenty of units. You're going to have fearsome blockers with this Petty Officer. Obviously, if we have the -1 attack effect come down, then it won't matter. But we do otherwise have blockers for this early game, so that even if this Nocturne does come down in the next couple of turns, Winding God's still going to be decently healthy, sitting at this 18 health.
It looks like Cephalopod is sort of contemplating maybe playing the Dusk Petal into the Nocturne, seeing if we can get another early Nocturne level, because this is a very board-centric deck on the side of Winding God. A lot of the tools that you're going to have to deal with your opponent's board are just sort of stat trading your units into their units. We see the Petty Officer getting this random 1-drop that gives you a lot more extra stats to play with. And, you know, we sing the praises of Petty Officer all the time. Looks like we're going to go for a burst pass after this. It's always like your opponent never does anything other than pass back there, right? Like there's no universe where Winding God actually plays something there.
No, I think you're 100% right. We do see this Doctor come down with exactly what I was just saying, though, with this -1 attack. So now suddenly Petty Officer blocking is off the table. I don't think, is this going to level up the Nocturne again like we saw last turn?
No. This will put the Nocturne at 3 out of 5.
Okay, I was gonna say, wow, 2 games in a row, huh? But no, so we aren't gonna get fearsome given to the entire board, so this isn't gonna be quite as much damage pushed through. But Nocturne is a pretty big boy at 5 attack and a fearsome unit. Push through 5 damage here on the side of Cephalopod. That's going to do wonders in getting Winding God down to 13 here and actually putting Cephalopod in a position to win the game.
Oh, but a
Oh,
gold card out of the Twisted Fate says, you know what? I may not have a fearsome blocker to kill this, but I do at the very least have a way to stop it from hitting me in the face. And there's still some good trades on the side of Cephalopod. I think at the very least, he's going to have this Solari soldier kill the petty officer. And then, I mean, you might as well go in with the Shade Stalker at that point as well. You can go in with everything, actually. Even the Dusk Trader gets to kill one of these units that it normally. I mean, it's not going to look as pretty. Okay, we're actually just going to trade that one of the petty officer. I like this as well. Every unit that Cephalopod is attacking with, sort of unblocked at the moment, will at least survive that extra 1/1 on the Solari soldier coming in really big here.
yeah, this is not a bad attack for Cephalopod to still go ahead and take. Everything trades quite well on the side of Winding God. Really, nothing he's going to be able to play. I mean, technically, something like a Ravenous Flock could, finish off one of these units, but I highly doubt he's going to want to invest a Ravenous Flock in anything currently on the unless it's the Nocturne. It looks like, yeah, Winding God just going to take this 5 damage. So even though the Nocturne was stunned out, Winding God still going to opt to take the 5 damage there. I'm curious to see what he's setting up for. I imagine there's some sort of plan coming out next turn for him to want to keep his board that wide and not really be too concerned about dipping below, now down to 12 health after this unspeakable.
On Pale Cascade's not a bad pickup. A little bit of an awkward activator for Cephalopod. Doesn't really want to be casting any of these as the activator. What can he top deck here? Is it a 1-drop? It's a third Pale Cascade. And that means I think he's just going to have to either accept the draw on not the Pale Cascade or the Unspeakable Horror. Could just play the Diana this turn, but with her being so far from leveling and regaining that Challenger ability, I really think you want to be using her to kill the Twisted Fate this turn. So there is still sort of one more top deck turn before Cephalopod really cares about the having an activator for that Nightfall, unless he needs to use a Pale Cascade this turn to, do something like block the Twisted Fate with the Shade Stalker, and then a Make It Rain comes down and any of that extra HP. But I don't think he's going to be too upset to throw away one of them. Oh, look, there's the Make It Rain. And maybe we go to save the Nocturne here?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, that it feels bad having to use it just to save it with brain, but I do think it's really one of your primary forms of aggression right now, especially if you are able to eventually level up the Nocturne, which I imagine with one more good Nightfall attack will be able to do that. Plus, we have Diana. So, I mean, Pale Cascade doesn't feel terrible. I don't believe he'll be getting the Nightfall effect right now, right? Yeah, no
No,
Nightfall
no.
effect. So, kind of feels bad, but I don't know. I feel like it's something that Cephalopod might have to do here. And no, opts to actually just let the Nocturne die. Feels really bad to lose the Nocturne there.
Well, he's got another one that wasn't a real Unspeakable Horror. It was Nocturne the entire time, hiding in Cephalopod's hand as a champion spell.
There we go. All right, that makes a little bit more. Just see Nocturne go ahead and hit the field again. And it's kind of an awkward hand, right? Every single card in Cephalopod's hand is Nightfall, which feels terrible because you kind of don't want to play any of them, but you kind of also have to play one of them possibly. Maybe we'll see something like the Diana hit the field just to be mana efficient, but then Diana is just into so many different killing it as well. We do see Death's Hand as a 3 of in Winding God's deck, so that would potentially just get picked off quite nicely and put Winding God in a good spot. So definitely awkward to see what Cephalopod is going to decide to go with next year.
If he wants to, he can pull back the Shade Stalker, and then on his next turn, he can Pale Cascade the Shade Stalker to activate Nightfall, then play Diana and Nocturne, level both of them, and have a pretty good shot from there. But now he's kind of relying on his top deck, and I think he's really hoping for a spell that he can play here so that he can get down the Diana Nocturne combo. But with the Shade Stalker dead, the Nocturne no longer will level. It would only be Diana. But I mean, you do eventually have to answer this Twisted Fate from Winding God. There are salvages in the deck, so he does have that little bit of draw power to get him over the top. Winding God's curve has been really awkward this game, though. He didn't have Jack the Winner on 5. It looks like he doesn't have any of his other 4-drops, of which he does have plenty. I mean, he's got Yordle Grifters and Zap Sprayfins, both as 3-ofs alongside this TF. And of course, TF's pick card could be a big way to get this one leveled, but we'll see if it'll actually survive the Diana here.
I can't tell you how many times people like allow a Twisted Fate, or at least that we've seen. I feel they're like, Twisted Fate, it's just a 2/2. It's not doing much. Like he already had the card it's fine. And then suddenly it's all of a sudden leveled up, and you're like, oh wow, maybe I should have dealt with that a couple turns ago. And if that is what we're gonna see here on the side of Cephalopod, if that Twisted Fate does stick around, I think Winding God is able to just pick up a win here. And wow, okay. Also Gangplank as well as TF on the field. Now you have two threats that you have to deal with. This is starting to look really bad for Cephalopod.
And we don't have the challenger on this Diana. We did use it to sort of activate the Nightfall and the Nocturne. And that does mean we kind of have to pick between killing the Twisted Fate or the Gangplank this turn. And that's really only if there isn't a Death's Hand in Winding God's hand, as he does now have the keg, and we don't have an answer for that. This could be sort of the turning point of the game where if Winding God can hang on to these two champions, which is not the most unrealistic thing in the world, depending on what he actually goes for the challenge with, he could be in a rough spot here.
So I guess this Solari Soldier was in hand at the beginning of Cephalopod's turn, right?
Yeah, but he couldn't play Diana
Oh,
Nocturne and the Solari Soldier. Yeah. That's why I wanted him to hold back the unit for the Pale Cascade. He needed to sort of activate the Nightfall with the spell mana if he wanted to get both of these down and leveled.
I feel like this is a drawback of the Nightfall a lot of people don't usually think of, because Nightfall generally is considered to be a decently easy effect to proc. But we've seen here, at least for the last couple of turns, it seems like Cephalopod just has really awkward hands because of having so many Nightfall effects in hand. So it's just leading him to this weird spot of, okay, I have to choose one to not play. And unfortunately, we ended up going with the Diana because, as you said, it's not a challenger. This would have been so nice to remove TF and Gangplank this turn. It would have been absolutely great for Cephalopod. He would have been in a much better spot. But even if that did happen, I mean, we're sitting on 3 Pale Cascade. This is not the greatest hand from Cephalopod.
No, I mean, oh, Boulevard, when are you going to admit that you like cantrips? You have to spend mana on them.
Okay. All right. In this particular situation, yes, Pale Cascade seeming pretty bad right now. But
I mean, anytime that you have 3 buff spells in your hand and 2 units on board, you're not going to feel great about it, especially when they are as sort of mana inefficient like we see these being. And it even plays around the Pale Cascade by going for the Death's Hand onto the Diana with the keg instead of the Nocturne. Says, you know what, you can go ahead and kill my Gangplank. I'm pretty sure you got a Pale Cascade up there. One of these is a Diana, right? Or one of these was randomly created by an unspeakable horror. That's what it was.
Bingo, yeah. And that's still so now not only do you have 3 Pale Cascades, which feels really bad in general, your opponent puts you in a situation where it actually isn't even good to play any of them in response to their cards. So I think Winding God is playing this pretty well right now, and just Stalking Shadows too. It's gonna get Cephalopod a little bit more fuel to go ahead and summon something, but I don't really think the ideal card that he wanted to draw here. I think he's just kind of running out of steam. And because of that, I don't know if he's going to be able to get back into this. I think Winding God has a pretty good handle on this game right now.
I am a little surprised to see the pass out of Cephalopod. I mean, you could dig for something like a Doom Beast or, even a Cygnus the Moonstalker would have a pretty decent chance at ending the game over a couple of turns. You could play the Solari Soldier and the Cygnus here, push 8 damage on your opponent. On your next attack turn, go for it again. But we are now in Riptide Rex territory. And I don't think Cephalopod's board is going to be able to stick around long enough for something like a Cygnus Lethal. I think we're really looking for Atrocity at this point, but Winding God's health total is just too high.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I think he needs something like Cygnus and Atrocity. That might be a little bit overkill. I think Cygnus alone might be able to do it. I mean, it's going to be a little bit short, but he does have the Pale Cascades to kind of back it up and push through that extra damage. I don't imagine that Winding God is not going to have some sort of response to one of the units possibly attacking that's elusive, though. Something like even like a Death's Hand plus a Ravenous Flock. Like, I just feel like there'll be some way for Winding God to get around that. We do see the 2. All right, so the 2 Overwhelms drawn. This is actually pretty good to get these Crescent Guards on the side of Cephalopod. This will start to put some pressure on Winding God and push more damage to get him within a better range of using something like a Cygnus or, like you mentioned, Boulevard and Atrocity to really close out this game. So I think that is probably the card that he was.
All right, Make It Rain means Riptide Rex is coming down this turn.
And as much as that might have been the card he was, still a thing. Ezreal may have been nerfed, but not Riptide Rex. And it looking like that's what's going to happen. It's going to completely obliterate Cephalopod's board here if that does come down.
I'm trying to figure out sort of when the Rex actually does come down. Cephalopod almost certainly goes for the attack after this Make It Rain. And maybe we're not even setting up for a Riptide Rex, or maybe even worse, we're setting up for both a Ravenous Flock and a Riptide Rex. It looks like we are going to go for the Pale Cascade, see what we draw. Spacey Sketcher, not the best. Might even just end up discarding the Ephemeral unit here, but I mean, he has no protection from Ravenous Flock. He just doesn't have the mana to play the third Pale Cascade to get this up to an 11-5.
So, okay, it looks like we do have the Ravenous Flock. That's going to do a lot to prevent damage on the side of Winding God. I was going to say, are you ever playing the Make It Rain just to avoid your opponent from developing more? Like kind of bluffing the Riptide just so that your opponent thinks, okay, there must be a Riptide on the side of Winding God, so I can't actually develop, and I need to just go in for the attack here.
Well, you have to Make It Rain pre-combat to Ravenous Flock in combat. So I think that was more a setup for the Flock onto the Crescent Guardian.
Instead of the Riptide, you're saying?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But now we've got Jack the Winner down, and this has the hardy life total to be able to withstand things like the Crescent Guardian. And I mean, with Winding God's life total going untouched that turn, I think this should just be all she wrote. I don't think this Sleep with the Fishes is ever real. Oh, it's going to get used immediately. Okay.
What do we know?
Maybe now we do have the Riptide Rex. That's the only situation I could imagine this being used, unless it was to level the Gangplank here.
Yeah, I am. Well, I don't know. This just seems a little weird how Winding God, if Winding God does have a Riptide, I definitely feel like the last couple of turns were played a little bit weird. And no, instead we're going to see the Gangplank come down. So it might not be Riptide, but it is actually going to be a way for Winding God to at least start to threaten to close out this game anyways. And I mean, Cephalopod actually has less health than Winding God right now. Cephalopod is I guess theoretically is playing the more aggressive deck. I mean, hell, any deck that can pull out a turn 4 win, as we saw in the last match, I would vote as a pretty aggressive deck. But Winding God seemingly doing a better job of that in this game.
It's certainly the lower curve deck, but as we had mentioned, Winding God, this is a deck where you fight for board with the stat advantages that you have. Petty Officer, creating that random 1-drop, does a lot in fighting for board, and those are the kind of decks that Winding God thrives on. He's a Bannerman player. He's a Frostbite mid-range player. He is one of the best players in the game at playing the board, and that's why he's found so much success in Legends of Runeterra. This is an extremely board-focused game. The removal spells don't line up onto units as well and as mana efficiently as you could see in other games, and that's where Winding God's strengths are. Those are the strengths of Runeterra, and that's why he is, so I mean, even if his name wasn't Winding God, we would put the God on it.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a coincidence. I think, what was it, after he won the three duels of Runeterra in a row, didn't they actually label him in the Discord as God? So,
yes.
So well-deserved title there for God. Obviously showing off why he's very deserving of that name and of the God title in Discord here, and gonna get another Sleep with the Fishes to start the turn on top of 2 kegs, which, as we all know, the way that the kegs interact, we are going to be able to play the Sleep with the Fishes on the keg, still get the extra damage with it, which means we're looking at a Sleep with the Fishes of 4 damage here, which could start to really put pressure on Cephalopod to, either he wins the game soon with something like what we're seeing here with Fading Memories, going in with some elusives and possibly the overwhelm of the Crescent Guardian, or he just ends up losing. And I don't think with what Cephalopod has in his hand, he has enough gas to really get him to being able to close out this game before he does.
I mean, we talk a lot about the Atrocity Diana combos, and having 2 Pale Cascades on top of that Diana, I'm trying to think of how much that actually does represent. If we see a Riptide Rex here, though, I think that is just the end of the game. You love to get those Sleep with the Fishes down onto the barrels. Cephalopod not going for the open attack does mean that he is going to take all of that damage, but could see the death of the Gangplank here.
Yeah, this is we've yet to see, I think, a really sweet Diana Atrocity come out from any of these. Oh, there it is.
Misses the Diana.
Oh my god.
I don't think it really matters, given that the other 2 units are dying. Cephalopod is so low. Even if you kill this Gangplank, there's still so much damage represented on Winding God's board. But I feel like this is the 3rd or 4th time this week where we've just seen 2 or 3 units on board, and Rex just decides to completely ignore one of them.
Winding God might be God in general, but Cephalopod, at least for right now anyway, G God, saving his Diana. And like I was mentioning, and now this might still be a possibility with the Diana living, we haven't really seen that sweet, like really massive Diana into Atrocity combo with any of these, Nightfall decks as of late. So it would be nice to see that happen here. We can already see right now
There's the
going up.
Atrocity.
There's the Atrocity.
I
We
don't
we
think,
have it. We have it. We
yeah,
have
Winding God doesn't have an answer for this. He would have to string together something into the Ravenous Flock, but Cephalopod can then just burst speed Pale Cascade and respond with the Atrocity. And I think he has actually top decked the lethal. The unfortunate
Oh,
Riptide Rex RNG out of Winding God into the top deck Atrocity. This is the kind of down to the wire Legends of Runeterra action that we were looking for when we came in to spectate this match.
oh my God. He's smiling because he knows it. So he just passed priority back over.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. You have to set up for the flock, but Cephalopod can respond with lethal
Yeah.
because the Pale Cascade burst speed will put this Diana up to, I believe, 14 or 13 attack.
But the problem is okay. Oh wait, we're just doing it now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, there's no problem. There's no problem.
Fine, there is no problem, and we have the top deck for the win. We finally see it. The sweet Diana Atrocity combo. Man, Boulevard, this tournament between the qualifier and the invitational, can we talk about some sweet top decks or what?
Oh, man. I mean, it doesn't feel good. I mean, Cephalopod looks pretty happy with the win, but you have to think, that's not the end of the match. You still have a couple of games to win. And you are still going to have to play against that Noxus Nab deck again, which did look pretty good. But that Riptide Rex I can't get over how much luck went into that last turn.
Yeah, there's two things. The Riptide had to miss the Diana there, and then Cephalopod had to draw into the Atrocity. Cephalopod, might I add, is only playing one Atrocity. So a lot had to go right there, and Cephalopod got it. I mean, this is why I think this seals the deal for Atrocity.
The craziest part is that we're pretty sure with that Death's Hand, he was playing towards his second Ravenous Flock, which means that if Rex had touched Diana even one time, the Flock would have been available, and she wouldn't have been able to go for that Atrocity. And this is what I mean when I say that Shadow Isle decks are only Atrocity or Harrowing decks at the moment.
Wow. That was a pretty crazy, but it does look like the not big. Two aggro decks back to back on the side of Cephalopod. We'll see if this more aggressive deck, in my opinion, than the Nightfall aggro is able to take a victory versus this kind of nab Noxus deck that we have here on the side of Winding God. Oof, wow.
So this is a matchup that we've seen a couple of times. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think it usually goes the way of the Pirate aggro. The Nab deck, while it is board centric, your opponent has the same tools as you do in the Petty Officer and the Dreadway Deckhand, things like that, in terms of just fighting you for board and the units that they can kind of spam out. The extra over-the-top burn that the Pirate aggro brings, especially now that they've gravitated more towards the Decimate, does just seem to favor them pretty heavily.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect example of, you either want to play a little bit fast, a little bit slower than your opponent in a lot of different card games. One of the reasons why control beats mid-range beats aggro, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, I think that the deck that Cephalopod's playing with this Pirate aggro here is able to just beat out the Noxus Nab version a little bit quicker with things like you just mentioned, the Decimate. And because of that, Cephalopod's probably going to have the advantage here, but we'll see. We'll see. As we just saw, absolutely anything could be is possible right now in this matchup, but we do see the Death's Hand take care of this Legion Grenadier. Still going to do 1 damage to Winding God, and otherwise everything trading quite nicely here, as we'd probably expect in this matchup to start. Like you said, both decks having very similar tools.
Yeah, but I mean, Cephalopod has not irrelevant refuel on this turn, can get down the Corsair alongside something like a Misfortune, has Jack the Winner available for the next turn, and once again, Winding God with 9 4-drops in his deck, doesn't have one on turn 4. I think we saw the Twisted Fate on 4 last game, but I don't know. Twisted Fate doesn't really count as a 4-drop for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's more like a spell. He's just like he's a glorified 4-cost spell that's a 2/2 unit. Yeah, no, this is right now anyways, though, I got to give a slight advantage to Cephalopod. One of the things I usually look for early on in the game is when there's even trades like we just saw. So, both players have 5 cards in hand, 1 on the field, and that was due to last turn, basically everything trading evenly. Cephalopod actually had the 1 extra mana above Winding God. So just a slight advantage there in regards to just mana tempo in general. And I think that's why now we're starting to see the tempo kind of pick up here for Cephalopod. We have the 2 units. We have this Crackshot Corsair, which again, I love this card. We see this come out from so many players in the Pirate aggro right now. And on top of that, it's next to a Misfortune Boulevard. We talked about this yesterday. The Legion Saboteur looks like it's going to get some that exact effect of, I'm going to summon my 1 cost unit and deal 3 damage to your face. Yep. Yes, please. Let me have that trade.
Yeah, I mean, just all we need is a keg on the stack, and all of a sudden, I mean, no matter what I attack, or as long as I attack with the Legion Saboteur, rather, you're taking 3 damage to the face before we even get to the combat numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, outside of a deny, which obviously we're not going to see here with no Ionia in play, those those are going to go face. There's no way to prevent any of that damage. So this is why Crackshot is in the deck. This is why it's seeing a lot more play. Not having that 1 health is definitely a pretty big buff. Because obviously you look at the board here. If you're not familiar with some of the changes, Crackshot used to be 1/1, is now a 1/2. Much different board, I feel, if it was a 1/1 right now, even to the point where, proving me right here, Cephalopod, using the effect of Imperial Demolitionist to show off this buff, Cephalopod says, "Thank you, Riot. I will take this buff and I will try to get a win with it."
Ooh, that's some decent RNG on the side of Cephalopod. Does get to kill the barrel, and that means that the not only will the Misfortune live, but the Crackshot Corsair no longer really, or the board rather, not really threatened by anything like a Make It Rain at this point. There are 1 health units now, so the keg, I guess, kind of irrelevant, but being able to save the MF is huge here. And he's actually just going to say, you know what, it's pretty lucky that she lived. I'm kind of willing to just throw her away in combat now.
Yeah, and we are still going to push the extra 3 damage too, getting the lead to face as well. Looking pretty stinking good for Cephalopod. We have the Jack the Winner in hand as well. Problem is starting to fall behind a little bit in cards. So might be a little worried about running out of gas here. We have 4. 1 Sleep of the Fishes would be another 2. That's 6. Technically we're getting up there, but wow, okay, never mind. This red card here going to clear the field. That might do it for Cephalopod. It's going to be hard for him to come back from.
So theoretically, Jack the Winner represents 6 damage over the course of a couple of turns, as you can throw 3 Sleep with the Fishes on himself before he ends up dying, and pair that with the Decimate, and Cephalopod does have lethal over the course of 3 turns, and I don't think Winding God's going to actually have a way to kill the Jack the Winner. So as long as he can maintain his life total, or at least not kill the Jack the Winner before it gets down, at least a couple Sleep with the Fishes, you could kill it with a Flock in response to the first one, and oh, excuse me. Maybe that's one of the reasons that we constantly see this Noxus Nab deck come out, just really valuing the Flock in the more Jack the Winner centric Bilgewater meta that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like things like Death's Hand, even it can at least stop the last one. If 2 of them go off, that's 4 damage. If we go for a 3rd one, the Death's Hand can actually snipe off Jack the Winner really nicely. But in this case, yeah, I think we will see 1 Sleep with the Fishes come out. I think we'll then see a pretty quick Ravenous Flock. If Winding God doesn't have the Ravenous, however, then things are going to be looking rough because now we have a Noxie and off the top as well. So Cephalopod absolutely not running out of gas here, drawing, it looks like just what he's going to need to deal exactly, that 10 damage to go ahead and win this game. Thankfully for Winding God, too, has the Brayfin in response to Cephalopod zap to go ahead and block that elusive unit, because that would have been a real problem if Winding God didn't have that in response.
Now, the Zap Sprayfin pickup could be really big, though. If it got the Flock or another copy of Death's Hand to be able to take out one of these units, it could be big. The question for this turn is really, what is Cephalopod throwing this Sleep with the Fishes onto? You could sacrifice the Jagged Butcher. I don't think you ever want to sacrifice the Zap Sprayfin. You could risk your Jack the Winner, but I think you have to play it this turn, and it looks like it will just be the sacrifice onto the Jagged Butcher. Says, you know what? You're a good pirate. You've served me well, but it's time. It's your time. It's just your time.
I love this. So we kept talking about Ravenous Flock. I love this. It plays around Ravenous Flock. It guarantees that Cephalopod definitely gets another Sleep with the Fishes off. As I don't really think there'll be another way for Winding God to deal with it before that. There could very well be a Death plus a Ravenous Flock, which is, we might need to see that, or even this Make It Rain plus a Ravenous Flock. So if that's the case, Winding God definitely saves himself quite a bit of health here. But Jack at 5 health is going to need something else to do that additional damage on top of the block, like a keg or something similar.
Ideally, it's double Make It Rain into the Flock, in which case Cephalopod is set up for this Noxian Fervor, but it's actually just going to be a block onto the Sprayfin. So Yeah, I think that I think Keg Flock is looking pretty likely, and Cephalopod doesn't have anything to protect against that. But I mean, with the burn that he has in hand, once it all gets played out, Winding God's at 1.
Well, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, Winding God's dead once we get the sleep of the fishes.
I don't think
So,
Jack's living the turn.
so are we thinking another? Well, there'd be Flock.
Yeah, it has to be Keg Flock or some other damage spell Flock, but maybe Winding God just doesn't have it. I'm about to eat my words as here it comes. What if it's double Flock, and that's why he's sort of contemplating this so hard?
Oh, that would feel so bad.
Yeah, I think
There's,
it's looking like that's what it is, honestly.
well, you got to do what you got to do, and I do play if that. And we are, if he is able to do that as well, we are going to be able to push through a lot of damage on the side of Winding God on an open attack. Maybe he'll develop. He can push through even more damage because, pretty crucially, actually, this is interesting for Cephalopod. He could play the Noxian Fervor to at least get that 3 damage because, very crucially, he does not have a unit to play the Fervor. So this will actually save the Ravenous Flock from the side of Winding God if he was indeed trying to play 2 of them. But it looks like Cephalopod's considering killing the Gangplank too. I don't know. I feel like you just go face here.
So if you go face here and you don't top deck a unit and Winding God open attacks you and plays Riptide Rex, you lose.
Yeah, and it looks like that is exactly what Cephalopod is worried about here. Still didn't play anything yet, though. Going to go ahead and pass back, maybe trying to bait out Flock. And
Oh,
all right, it's going to be parlay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, just as much. It does the same job. Probably feel a little less bad about having to play a parlay in a Ravenous Flock on the Jack winner. But good read by Cephalopod, though, realizing that, Winding God probably wouldn't have played the way that he did that turn if he didn't have something else to target that Jack and kill it with. So really baiting out every possible resource on the side of Winding God, and does opt to remove the Gangplank there, worried about just losing to something like you mentioned, Riptide Rex.
Oh, but Jack the winner, number 2 for the game. Winding God pulling out his own this time around. And I mean, the killing the Gangplank does mean that Cephalopod feels pretty far off of lethal. He does have, let me just confirm this real quick before I say something dumb. Okay, yeah. He does have Captain Farron in the deck. So he does have, more decimates in the deck and even a decimate generator. So he really only needs one of those to win the game, but does specifically need one of those. Even Gangplank isn't going to get it done at this point, as that just doesn't get through Jack the winner.
I think this is going to come down to top decks again. I mean, God, that's going to be at least 2 damage. It doesn't look like Cephalopod's really going to be able to push any more than this 1 damage with the Legion Saboteur through this turn.
No,
and it
but
might
that does set up some good lethal options. Never mind.
Well, I mean,
all right,
yeah, actually.
Riptide Rex.
So in response to an open attack next turn, there actually is nothing Cephalopod can do, I think. I think Winding God just wins if he goes ahead and open attacks. Yeah, okay, not definitely.
Oh man, Jack the winner, number 2 as well as salvage for the refill. So yeah, Winding God just playing out his hand, says, look at all this cool Bilgewater action I had going on. What can you do about it? And Cephalopod says, I have 1 Jagged Butcher. Please leave him alone. He's trying his best. It's his first day on the job. Please don't hit my Nexus. Another Jack the winner off the top for Cephalopod, but that's not going to be enough. And we are going to a game number 3.
All right, so they are not disappointing. Winding Cephalopod here, bringing us to 3 games. I think Boulevard. I think this is exactly what both of us wanted to see. A 3-game
I think this is what we expected.
Okay, yeah, I guess it was also expected. Yeah, but I would have been a little disappointed if it was 2-0 on one side or the other. I'm not gonna lie.
If this was the match where we saw the turn 4 kill from the Nightfall aggro deck, that would have been surprising. But if I am right and it was the Lux Soul Band, it means that our last game will be Pirate aggro versus Zombie Ash.
Yeah, and definitely an interesting matchup. Curious to see Zombie Ash for the first time today, but I feel like it's very much going to be dependent on the draw as usual. Zombie Ash on the side of Winding God has plenty of removal. We have the 2 Vengeance, 2 Ruination, but no heal, no Withering Wail.
3 Kindly Tavern Keeper.
Oh, sorry, there is 3 Kindly Tavern Keepers, so that would definitely help on the side of Winding God. But again, I feel like opting for no Grasp, opting for no Withering Wail definitely hurts him a little bit. I do think that there's a lot more room for this Pirate aggro deck to actually sneak in an early victory, with that being said, because now you're really relying on drawing 3 specific cards. Averrosion Sentry is definitely good as well. It can act as a sort of chump blocker and just stall out to, draw you into that Kindly Tavern Keeper. So if you're right and the ASOL was banned out, it's going to be interesting to see who's able to take this third game home here between Winding God and Cephalopod.
I don't love the idea of a Thresh Ash deck into the Pirate aggro. I feel like the Brittle Steels and Flash Reuses and Harsh Winds, as well as, having 2 Ruination and 2 Vengeance, it's just really expensive removal on the side of Winding God. This is definitely a deck that you bring more for the War Mother's Call decks or the Endure Spiders or things like that. Its aggro matchup is not necessarily something that this deck is known for. It's not praised. We're not like, oh man, if you want to beat aggro, you bring Zombie Ash. And oh no, the Zombie Ash was banned. It's going to be the
Wow.
Lux ASOL.
Lux Aurelion Soul versus this Pirate aggro. So a little bit here then. I will say though, Winding God opting for 1 Bastion here, 2 Hush, and then also 3 Guiding Touch. So the 3, and obviously 3 Star Shaping, I guess it goes without saying, right? So
yeah.
Instead of the 2 Vengeance, 2 Ruination, like we are just talking about with Zombie Ash, I think this deck will definitely have a much easier time against this Pirate aggro. But I don't know. It's still going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. 3 Laurent Protege as well on the side of Winding God there.
Yeah, that was sort of the one weird thing about Winding God's deck is he has brought 3 Laurent Protege instead of Solari Priestess, so gonna have a little bit less Celestial Generation, but it's definitely gonna play out a lot better for him into this Pirate aggro matchup. Things like that Crackshot Corsair now die a lot easier, and the Protege actually gives you another challenger in the deck to let you proactively activate your own Radiant Guardians.
Yeah, I love Laurent Protege. I love that deck decision here by Winding God. I think it's absolutely great. It's going to take care of almost every early unit that Cephalopod's able to get down here. Like you said, Corsair, Jagged Butcher if it's not buffed up, Legion Saboteur, Imperial Demolitionist. Or actually, Imperial Demolitionist will live, but it will be able to block it out. And then obviously the Legion Grenadier and Petty Officer and Zap Sprayfin also all have 2 health. So I think this is one of the best deck decisions if this is exactly what he's trying to pirate.
I mean, this is a really aggressive opener on the side of Cephalopod, though. This is about as burn heavy as you can get for the early game, getting down the Corsair, the Grenadier, the MF. And turn 4, not necessarily the best turn for Winding God, but he finds another Protege. And that means that one of these will definitely live into the following turn and have a good Radiant Guardian activator. If there's something like a Radiant Guardian in a single combat left in Winding God's hand when all is said and done, that might just be the ball game. Jack the Winner will still be a little bit tough to deal with, but that's really the only obstacle he'd have to get over is he's going to be sitting pretty at 20 life for most of the game at that point.
Yeah, wow. And that's the thing too, when you're playing against really any Aurelion Soul deck at this point, with the metagame that we're currently in, and you get them down to something like 13 right now, that's not 13. It might as well be 20. Like until you see Star Shapings and Guiding Touches start to come out, you basically just have to account for dealing like 40 damage. And then consider that 13 to be accurate. But yeah, it's going to be a little ways until Cephalopod can actually think he's got anything close to lethal. I will say if he's able to be really quick about it here, there's the slim possibility that Winding God simply doesn't draw into those. And as I say that, we see a Guiding Touch come out. So already going to get 2 quick heal in. And also, as a cantrip, as Boulevard loves them so much, will give him potentially draw into another one or possibly a Star Shaping.
I feel like I have so many sort of like nicknames and slogans. It's like, I don't care about ladder. I don't like cantrips.
It's all right. It's all right, Bull. I got your back for most of them. I personally like cantrips because I like OTKs and big combo decks, but that's just me.
Okay. Oh, no Radiant Guardian on turn 5, though. Maybe just setting up a more defensive turn, seeing the Jack the Winner come down, you say, maybe even if I have the Radiant Guardian, I'm just going to be eating a little bit too much damage this turn for that to be a realistic option. Instead, I can just activate that next turn with one of my Proteges.
Yeah, we'll see where the blocks line up here for Radiant, for Winding God. I almost called Winding God Radiant Guardian for some reason. That's how big of a card that is in this.
They're both really, really good.
Yeah, they both are really, really good. And there are 3 Radiant Guardian. So that's yet another way for him to heal up. If that's the route he decides to take. And man, gonna push through some damage, but I just, it never feels like it's really doing much. even getting the keg off with the misfortune effect, which honestly feels really good. It's always going to feel good, but there's just so much heal. Like I can't. And if we hit a Radiant Guardian here, okay,
Ooh,
not a Radiant
okay.
Guardian.
Not quite.
Okay, yeah, that would have been rough for Seth.
And this actually, if you can find a Pale Cascade alongside it, this could be a kill onto the Jack the Winner, but Cephalopod critically picks up a Gangplank, so still going to have a beefy unit that Winding God's going to have to chew through. And Jack the Winner is just such an awkward card for this deck to deal with. Anything with 5 HP, I feel like the Lux Asol deck has a pretty decent chance at getting through, but once you get up to 6 HP, it's like, oh, that's a really big man. How do I ever get through this? It's going to take a concerted strike with a 5 attack unit alongside something else, so that is available, but that would be a big mana commitment. And then we still have something like the Sleep with the Fishes down onto the keg created by the Gangplank.
Yeah, it looks like we're actually going to be using the Sleep with the Fishes on the Misfortune, possibly. And I don't know. I think this is just Cephalopod really trying to be as quick as possible, going face with Winding God. Again, just thinking, okay, he either has heal or he doesn't. And if I'm able to just burst him down before he draws into it, then maybe that's my win condition. Because the longer this game goes, is 100% in the favor of Winding. So I don't necessarily hate this, especially with 2 Make It Rains in hand. That's theoretically 2 more damage to face that could potentially be done here. And that feels really bad, though, because we know why Sleeping Fishes was used on Misfortune to avoid Jack the Winner being killed so easily. And it just feels really bad to have Concerted Strike come out now and not get more value out of it.
We're in a sort of mind game turn that we haven't seen in quite some time, where Cephalopod has a big threat in his hand, but Winding God has a challenger that can kill it and is sort of showing an unwillingness to attack at the moment and saying, you know what, if you don't want to develop the board, I'm fine with that. We can go ahead and pass this turn. You can open attack with your Misfortune if you really want to, see how far that gets you. But Cephalopod knows that he needs to get this down, and now it should lose his Gangplank and his keg to the Badger Bear and Fleet or Swiftwing Lancer, but gonna get the keg down actually to push a little bit more damage onto that Badger Bear, get some value out of the damage on the face as well. And I mean, the Gangplank is still gonna die, but Winding God's pretty low here, 5 HP, and we're pretty sure he doesn't have a Radiant Guardian. Star Shaping's cool, but if Cephalopod top decks another big threat, I don't think it's gonna be enough.
Yeah, and this is what I mean, right? I mean, if Cephalopod can put together 5 damage in like the next turn, maybe 2, but that's pushing it, maybe he gets a win. If he's not able to put it away in these next couple of turns, I gotta think Winding God has some sort of way to heal. And okay, Noxian Fervor is not bad, but again,
I mean, Noxian Fervor is lethal potentially. This is the attack turn for Cephalopod. He's got the elusive unit.
It's so it literally, this entire thing is dependent on what Winding God, if either he has Guiding Touch or he has Star Shaping, one or the other. If he doesn't, then it's going to be game.
Oh, and he's fallen down to 2 HP, and that looks like a leveled Gangplank on the side of Cephalopod. Okay, Guiding Touch. I mean, we're still in lethal range of the burn spells that Cephalopod has in hand. On top of that Legion Grenadier that's sitting there, Grizzled Ranger, we're tapped out. Do you take the Fervor while the single combat isn't on the table? That's risky.
This is so close, right? I mean, he's again 1 off of lethal, and Winding God doesn't have enough for heal.
He's 1 mana off of lethal too. If he could get down the Grenadier and play the Fervor, that would do it. And at 1 mana, Winding God wouldn't be able to stop him, but he's just a little bit too far away.
Oh, this feels so bad. It's so close. So this leads me to believe, though, if Winding God was so quick to play the Grizzled Ranger like that, he must not have Star Shaping in hand. Either that or he just knows that the amount of mana that Cephalopod is sitting on, he absolutely cannot possibly have lethal. So he doesn't mind playing the Grizzled Ranger and getting more units to the board. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Winding God is able to draw one of those. Definitely have lethal. Like this turn, I think, decides the game.
Yeah, I think Cephalopod's got this one, right? I mean, Winding God will have a shot in the losers bracket. Is that how we're doing this? We still have to send someone else on other than Cephalopod, right? I'm trying to, because we don't play a winners finals, do? Oh, we probably do actually. Okay. Lux is not a great start to the turn. Wow. I think that is gonna do it.
That's game. Even a Guiding Touch would.
Yeah, no, that is going to be Cephalopod taking this one, is going to be moving on to the winners bracket finals of the Group of Death.
Wow.
And he will be guaranteed making it into that round robin round coming in next. So I do want to talk on pick'ems for a second here. I split the difference I didn't have Cephalopod getting out of groups, but I did have him top 8ing.
I had him getting out of groups.
So my thing was either if he does get out of groups, I'm sure he's going to top 8, but I wasn't sure if he was going to get out of groups. So I was like, yeah, you're not going to get out of groups, but if you do, I'm going to put you at the top.
All right, and Cephalopod gonna take it 2-1 there over Winding God. I know we did our pick'ems, and most of us had Cephalopod going pretty far in this tournament. So let's see if he will be able to make it into part 2 of day 1, and then follow that up by making it into day 2. But as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.